right, so yesterday you watched the video. It was last year's video, so there weren't page numbers and stuff up on here, but there was on the calendar. You should have been able to figure it out. 8.1 went on page 122. Do you have any questions about 8.1? Okay. Then you did 8.2, which went on 123. Any questions on 8.2? It was all pretty basic, right? So I figured a video was going to be fine. Let's talk about this definition because it's going to be very similar to the next definition we have. It's not the same thing, but it's similar. So for an arithmetic sequence from yesterday, a sequence in which the difference between two consecutive terms is constant. So when you're looking at a pattern and you add 8, add 8, add 8, or whatever it is, that's the difference between the two, right? And it's constant. It's the same thing over and over again. Okay. So then let's look at today's. There we go. This is going on page 124 when we are done. So that was an arithmetic sequence yesterday. Today we're going to talk about a geometric sequence. So geometric sequence is a sequence in which the ratio between any two consecutive terms is constant. Okay, so a sequence in which the ratio between any two consecutive terms is constant. The only word that's different between this and an arithmetic sequence is the ratio. For arithmetic, it's a difference. For geometric, it's a ratio. Okay? And it's constant. It means the same thing over and over again. So I'm not adding something each time or subtracting something each time. I'm multiplying by something each time. So your common ratio is a numerical ratio between any two consecutive terms. Okay, he is not here. Thank you. All right. And then here our variable is equal to R. So you have D for the common difference, R for the common ratio. This next part says to determine the common ratio, then find the next three terms. We don't need to find the next three terms because, again, that's totally something that you can do. That's not really the purpose of what we're doing. But the common ratio, you can clearly tell. So if you didn't know if it was a geometric sequence or series, when you're looking at that and you got to figure out, am I adding the same thing or am I multiplying the same thing? I am clearly not adding the same number every time because this jumps a lot, right? So we can look at, all right, what do I multiply 8 by to get 24? 3, so it's times 3. Then here I multiply by 3. Like you got to check a couple of them. You can't just. So then R equals 3. Okay. All right, so then on number 2, figure out what you multiply by. And why do none of you have your calculators? Remember the conversation about get your calculator until I tell you not to get your calculator? Okay, so we said -4. We all agree with that? Yeah, no, -4 does not make sense because 512 times 4 is definitely not 128. It is definitely negative, though, because the signs alternate, right? But I am multiplying this by a -1/4, this by a -1/4, -1/4. Because it's not what you are dividing by, it is what you are multiplying by. So R is equal to a -1/4. Okay, we're good with that? So like I said, we could easily find the next 3 terms, right? Just keep multiplying and no big deal. But what if I wanted the 50th term? Do we want to have to write out 50 terms? No, we do not. So we have a formula for this. It looks like this. The nth term of any geometric sequence can be found using the formula. A sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r to the n minus 1 power. Where a sub 1 is the initial term and r is the common ratio. Okay. We good on that? All right, so then our directions say write an explicit rule for each, then find a sub 8. So I have to write a rule, and then I have to find the 8th term, okay? So I need to figure out, in order for this to happen, I need a sub 1, which is what? Negative 2400, good. And I need r. So first of all, is r going to be positive or negative? Positive, because the signs don't alternate, right? All right, so is it going to be a fraction or a whole number? A fraction, because the numbers get smaller. So it's 1 over what? 2. Okay, so that means that I get a sub n is equal to negative 2400 times 1/2 to the n minus 1 power. There's my explicit rule. Then I have to find the 8th term. Just because you get to use a calculator does not mean that you're allowed to not write anything down. The great majority of you do understand that, but there are a few of you that don't understand that and got lots of points taken off your test. You can't just have a number now, okay? You have to have an actual, what did you do here? So I have a sub, what am I looking for? The 8th term, that is equal to negative 2400 times r, which is 1/2 to the 8 minus 1 power. Your first step should always be 0 work. You just substitute it in. Then that is what you can put in your calculator. In the calculator, you can put a 7 instead of 8 minus 1. But the safest thing to do always is just substitute it all in. It shows that you know the process. On an AP test, that could be worth a point. Okay? You make a ridiculous mistake because you were trying to do too much at once. That's a bad thing. Okay? So then you can put all that in the calculator. And you should get that the 8th term is negative 75 over 4. Any questions about that? We good? All right. So on number 4, my first term is 7 over 36. My r. So first of all, is r going to be positive or negative? Negative. Is it going to be a whole number or a fraction? It's getting bigger, right? So it's going to have to be a whole number. You don't even have to worry about this mess right here. What do you multiply 7 by to get 42? 6. There you go. Okay. So then write your rule and come up with the 8th term. There you go. Make sure you can get that number so that you know you're pushing all the right buttons. Do you have any questions? We're all good? Okie dokie. All right, so we're not going to do every single one of these, because some of these end up being different here. All right, let's look at number 6. So they give us the second term. They give us r. We want the 10th term. What do we have to write our formula? The first term, and we don't know what that is, right? So my formula, remember, is a sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r to the n minus 1 power. All right, so I'm going to substitute in everything I know. I'm going to use this term as my nth term so I can find the first term because I have r, right? So this will be a. Now, there's a different way. I know because it's the second term. It's super easy. We can figure it out by division, okay? But we're going to pretend, because I need to change this question, and I don't want to change it on the fly because our numbers will be weird. We're going to pretend like it's not just the second term, and it would be way more complicated to find the first term. You with me? Just for process? Okay. So a sub 2, which is negative 8, is equal to the first term, which we don't know, times r, which is 4, to the 2 minus 1 power. Right? So then that means this is going to be 4 to the 2 minus 1 power is just 4 to the first. So if I divide, so I'll get negative 8 equals a sub 1 times 4. So when I divide, I get that the first term is negative 2. And again, since it was just the second term, we could divide by 4 and get negative 2. But that's the process because they're not all going to be that easy. Then, now that I have that, I can say, all right, well then my formula here is a sub n is equal to the first term, which is negative 2, times r, which is 4, to the n minus 1 power. There's my explicit formula. I want the 10th term. So the 10th term is equal to negative 2 times 4 to the 10 minus 1 power. Then I can figure out what the 10th term is. All right, what questions you got? Are we good on that? Yeah? Okay. So then let's look at number 7. And I have the 5th term, I have r, and I want the 11th term. So I'm going to have to find the first term, right? So I'm going to use this as my nth term. So a sub n, which is 1/4, is equal to the first term, which I don't know, times r, which is 1/2, to the 5 minus 1 power. So this will give me 1/4 equals a sub 1. So what is 1/2 to the 4th power? 1 over what? 1 over 16? All right, so then how do I find the first term? Multiply both sides by 16? Yes? So what's 16 over 4? 4. So there's my first term. Now you find the 11th term. What questions do you have? We're all good? All right. So we're going to skip number 8. We don't need to do number 8. But number 9 is a little different here. I have the first term. I have the 6th term. I want the 12th term. But before I find the 12th term, what do I have to find? R. Okay. So I know that I have, let's write this, a sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r to to the n minus 1 power, right? So this is my a sub n, right? So I'm going to get a sub 6, which is 486. That's equal to the first term, which is 2, times r, which I don't know, to the 6 minus 1 power. We all agree with that? Okay, so can I move that 2? Yeah, I can divide both sides by 2, right? So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. I'm going to get 243 equals r to the 5th power. I don't care about r to the 5th power. I want r. What do I do to get r? Whatever that's called. Okay, I was going to see if we can get the words out. Same thing happened last period. Like people knew what to do. They could not get the right words out and say it correctly, which is okay. What's more important, being able to say it correctly or do it correctly? Do it correctly. So as long as you know, that's fine. You know it's a root thing, right? And it seems to be hard for y'all to not say the square part of it. So I want you to think of it. If it was r cubed, what would I do? The cube root, right? It wouldn't be the square cube root like you want to say, but that's okay. I understand. It's the 5th root is the way you say it, okay? And it's more important that you know how to write it and you know what to do, but let's make sure we can say the words. So if it's r to the 5th, I want the 5th root. Just like r to the 3rd, it's really the 3rd root. And r squared is really the 2nd root, but they have special names. All right, so that means that r is actually equal to the 5th root of 243. And on these calculators, can I look at your calculator for just a second? If you look under the big oval button, you have an X to a little box and it says hex above it. You have a symbol that looks like this, and this is shaded in, and then there's an empty one. You see that? You have to hit shift or second to get that. You see that button? Okay, then it'll let you put a 5 right here or whatever number you want, and then the 243 right there. Okay, so what does r equal? 3. Fraction. Oh, or you could, yeah, absolutely. Yes. So this is, good point. So this is the same thing. So r equals the 5th root of 243. That is the same thing as 243 to the 1/5 power. You can do it both ways. Either way is fine. Good point. All right, so now that we have that, the rest should be, don't think I even touched anything. I think my sleeves are touching things. All right, so now I want a sub n. That's going to be equal to the first term, which is 2, times 3 to the n minus 1 power, which means when I go to find the 12th term, that is equal to 2 times 3 to the 12 minus 1 power. And gives me 354,294. What questions you got? We good? Okay, so number 10 is even a little bit different than that. On number 10, still don't know r, but here at least I had the first term. I don't even have the first term here. I have the 4th term and the 7th term. So when that happens, when you need r and you don't even have the first term, then we're going to think about in chronological order, the first term that we come to that we actually have is a sub 4. So this is going to be like our pretend first term. We're going to pretend like it's A1, and I'll show you what I mean by that. When we go to substitute everything in, and we're using this formula right here, this is our nth term. Okay, so negative 75 over 128 is equal to our pretend first term, which is 75 over 2, times the r that we don't know. N is 7 minus, now here, since this is our pretend first term, 1 is actually 4, because it's really the 4th term. Okay, because it's basically saying we're starting the sequence, we're not starting at the first term, we're starting at the 4th term. And since we're starting at the 4th term, there's only 3 between them, and that's why we need a 3 right there. Does that make sense to you? So if you're going to make a pretend first term, that's your pretend, the 1 has to change as well. So that means that we get negative 75 over 128 equals 75 over 2 times r to the 3rd power. So now how am I going to get r cubed by itself? Well, I can't take cube root yet. I got to get rid of that 75 over 2. You got two choices. You got a decent calculator. You can literally divide negative 75 over 128 divided by 75 over 2. That's fine. Or you can multiply by the reciprocal, which is this, whatever makes the most sense to you. Doesn't really matter to me. So then we get that r cubed is equal to negative 1 over 64, which means that r is equal to negative 1/4. We good with that? Now we want to find the second term. So a sub 2 is equal to the first term. Well, could we use that r now and actually go find the first term? We could. But we're not going to, because we can still use our pretend first term. That worked just fine, right? So our pretend first term is 75 over 2 times r, which is negative 1/4, to the n, which is 2, minus 1, but we have a pretend 1, so it's really 2 minus 4, which is really going to give us a negative exponent, but that's fine. It all works out just fine. And I get that the second term is equal to 600. But again, type it in. Make sure you actually, when you get this, when you push the buttons. Okay? What questions you got? We good? Any questions? Alrighty. Then that's it. Go ahead and get this taped in. If you did, some of y'all got yesterday's taped in, but if you didn't, go ahead and make that happen too.